Hundreds of Georgia's special needs children may lose access to their critical therapies as a Medicaid company is cutting reimbursement rates. Welcome to Behind the Investigation. I'm Anastasia Olmos, joined by investigative reporter Sierra Cummings. You have unlocked kind of the behind the scenes of what's going on with Medicare, but specifically for children.
Yeah, and I have to credit the people that are affected by this, the families, the clinic owners, because that's how we found the story. We got a tip to our investigative line about reimbursement rates, and I thought, what does that even mean, and what are you talking about? And one of the clinic owners who reached out to us, she went above and beyond and made a YouTube video breaking down what a reimbursement rate is under Medicaid and why it matters and what's happening in the state of Georgia. So after watching the YouTube video and understanding that this will have a trickle-down effect to not just hundreds at this point as we continue to report, it turns out it's going to be thousands of patients potentially impacted by these changes. And so we decided we need to go interview with her. And so you're going to hear the story of Therapy Works and Eileen, who owns this clinic, but it really at the heart of this is about special needs children who need resources. And because of a policy change, a change in money, it makes these vulnerable patients even more vulnerable in this pediatric network.
Great job.
These toys have helped hundreds of children learn to walk, talk, and grow.
Awesome job.
Many of the toys are much older than the clients Eileen DeoGracias treats at Therapy Works, a physical, occupational, and speech therapy clinic for children.
Toys are the tools of our trade.
They're now packed into these boxes because they won't be used here anymore.
We're closing our doors because we're up for renewal and we can't afford it anymore.
The official closure is May 31st.
I know I'm sad too.
But the final goodbyes have already begun.
Our landlord has been so nice and has, he believes in what we do and he's kept our rent under market value, but he said he can't do it anymore. And I understand, because we should be able to pay for our rent.
Rent is only a small piece of the puzzle. This letter is one of the others. A notice from CareSource. It's one of 3 companies in Georgia that handle Medicaid insurance. The letter states, effective May 11th, reimbursement for covered therapy services will be adjusted to 80% of the Georgia Medicaid fee.
It's like you're asking for a raise and your boss keeps saying no.
Not just saying no, she says, but giving even less money than before. CareSource will now cut the Medicaid payout by 20%. For instance, a speech therapist who teaches severely disabled children to talk, or physical therapists teaching special needs children to roll over, let's say the Medicaid payout they receive from CareSource was about $65,000 in total for all the patients they served that year. Under the new policy, they get 20% less. Their new annual payout, $52,000. But the workload has not changed. Neither has the cost of running a business. Which brings us back to Eileen shuttering Therapy Works. Her clinic primarily treats low-income kids on Medicaid through CareSource. She argues she can't do the same with less.
It's not been easy, Sierra. It's not been easy to kind of give up on a fight that you fought for all these years.
What do you worry the trickle-down effect will be?
I'm worried that the kids we serve will not be able to access the same care that we provide for them.
Here's why. An Atlanta News First Investigates analysis confirmed an already fragile network of pediatric providers. We found that out of 159 Georgia counties, 40 do not have any speech, physical, or occupational therapists in the Medicaid network, meaning at least 25% of the state has medical deserts for low-income families seeking special needs services. The effect? Patients forced to travel far from home, clinics forced to create waitlists, a vulnerable population left in limbo, and therapists are furious.
20% rate cut. Did all of you take a 20% pay cut? Why are you asking us to take a 20% pay cut? That's the first question.
Tensions flaring in a recent meeting to discuss it all. Therapists accusing CareSource of mismanaging funds. This after state lawmakers recently approved increasing payment rates for these therapists. An increase workers claim they're not getting under this new CareSource policy.
Where's the money going? If you're spending it on something else, that is misappropriation of funds. Fraud. If you did not receive the funds, then is DCH withholding them?
Okay, let me get to your question. Okay.
CareSource leadership responding.
Some of the notices that you receive for a rate reduction, we're not the only one doing it. But what we plan to do going into 2027 is eventually roll out an incentive model. And so it's going to be performance based so you can earn some of that money back.
Citing an oversaturation of therapists, the company says by cutting rates, they'll be able to reduce the total number of providers because they expect some providers will leave the network. But that oversaturation claim conflicts with our own analysis, which found dozens of counties with no CareSource Medicaid therapy providers at all. Plus, CareSource says it has about 2,000 providers listed in their Georgia network.
I want to confirm.
However, based on our calls to people on that provider list,
they've got clinics listed that they haven't been open for over a year.
The numbers appear to be outdated and inaccurate.
We should have closed our network probably 2 years ago, but we decided to continue to be a good steward and allow people to participate in our network. But now is the point that we don't need all the providers. So we did reduce the rates, but now we're going to change to a quality focused program.
So by giving you guys less money, it'll weed out people?
Yes.
Although Eileen is leaving the building, she won't be leaving CareSource's network. Instead, she plans to find a smaller space nearby and take only a few patients with her, a decision that will likely widen the gap in services for families who need them most.
It's hard to be fighting this. But I think it's a worthy fight. Because who will fight for them? Who will fight for the children? Who will fight for their families?
Joanna, can you say hi?
3-year-old Joanna is learning to walk again. She has a neurological disorder called alternating hemiplegia of childhood. It means episodes of paralysis. Joanna's mom, Raquel Lopez.
Roughly, I want to say every 7 to 10 days, she will lose one side of her body. So that hemisphere of the brain becomes depressed. Wow. And she essentially has a stroke for like 2 weeks.
The diagnosis is 1 in a million. Extraordinary, but so is Joanna's determination.
Good. This is Joanna's daily life. This is what helps her function. It helps her move around the world safely, communicate. It's given her a voice.
Raquel is crediting this facility, Tender Ones Therapy, or TOTS. The 20-year local clinic provides physical, occupational, and speech therapy services, teaching special needs children to move, eat, talk, and thrive.
I couldn't imagine life without therapy because she has progressed so much, and without TOTS, without her consistent, coordinated care, I don't know where we would be.
But in the coming weeks, the toddler will no longer have access to the services here at TOTS. The puzzling dilemma stems from this letter, a notice from CareSource, one of 3 companies in Georgia that handle Medicaid coverage for children like Joanna. The company telling clinics, including TOTS, they will cut reimbursement rates by 20%. For instance, a clinic that once received a Medicaid payout of $65,000 in total for all the Medicaid patients they served that year will now receive $52,000 under the new plan. Any clinic that objects to the cuts could be terminated altogether from their CareSource contract. It's what happened to TOTS. As a result, effective in August, the facility can no longer accept Joanna or other patients who use CareSource Medicaid insurance. TOTS owner, Noreen Zelenka, and Director of Patient Services, Kate Phillips.
We felt like we cannot take that reduction in reimbursement and still be able to keep our doors open to serve all the other children.
I don't know what to tell these patients, and I hate it for them. I mean, this is going to be catastrophic for a lot of them.
It comes as an Atlanta News First analysis shows 113 Georgia counties rely on special needs therapists through CareSource, meaning this change could impact at least 71% of the state's pediatric Medicaid network in some way. Noreen says it makes the entire system more brittle.
It's very discouraging, and that's why you find some practices just throwing up their hands and saying, I can't do this anymore, because it's one obstacle after another.
We're going to go ahead and begin.
This week, lawmakers at a state health committee meeting agreed.
I've got no tolerance for anyone who is hurting some of our state's most vulnerable kids.
Our efforts must be to making things better for the disabled before we think about doing anything else.
Local advocates and workers disturbed.
It will happen in rural areas, it'll happen in urban areas.
This is about the children. This is not about the practices.
The impact could be devastating.
For the current crisis, we ask you to help us intervene.
Lawmakers did not intervene, citing this meeting as the beginning of ongoing talks.
She knows all her therapists.
Meanwhile, parents like Raquel now joining long wait lists for other therapists who still accept CareSource insurance.
It scares us because therapy is not a luxury.
Wow, really powerful reporting when we meet the families in your stories. You always connect with them no matter what topic you're covering. This one in particular, where is the mom and the daughter now?
So Joanna, she is so sweet and she's doing a wonderful job learning to walk again, but it's a cyclical process. She loses the ability to walk and then she has to learn every few weeks. And so just this continuum of care has been such a godsend, the family says, for them. So it's a big deal. All that being said, because they rely on it so much, the family seems to be in denial a little bit, still in disbelief that they are going to be without this care come August. Because as we said in the story, this facility is saying, hey, we can no longer take CareSource patients because we no longer have a CareSource contract. So that means that in theory, the family should be out here searching for the clinic that would take their insurance, and they need to be planning. But in that planning process, they would have to join wait lists and potentially be in limbo for weeks and months trying to find a facility that will take them. But because the mom and the family is just still in a little bit of disbelief, she's like, I'm hoping lawmakers will step in and do something because I can't even think about what would happen next month. So we're checking in with that family. We hope that maybe they will find an avenue that puts Joanna in a position where she's not without therapy for months on end. But they're just going to have to join wait lists. And that's the really interesting thing about all of this. It's not as simple as knocking on a door, making calls and saying, let me go to Clinic B because Clinic A can no longer take me. It's already a system that's fragile. And so it's even more brittle with these changes as clinics either stop taking CareSource patients or decide to close their doors altogether, like Eileen.
Could we talk a little bit more about the outcome of what lawmakers were? We hear from so many lawmakers addressing it. What was the feeling out of that? Do you think they're going to do something?
It was a packed house. We showed the virtual stream of that meeting, but to pull the curtain back some, that was a state house committee health meeting. And so there were various items on the agenda. I think it was 4 that day. And so that was just one topic. But after they finished that topic, it seemed like everybody in the room got up and left. So that just shows you so many people came for that one item because it's such a big conversation right now happening in pediatric clinics all across the state of Georgia. So there were so many people that needed to leave. They're like, okay, you're moving on to the next agenda item. Now that we've discussed this, we, as families, as clinic owners, we can leave. And so that just shows you the impact. This is something they've wanted to hear from lawmakers over the last few months since they've been fighting this. Lawmakers recognize that. They looked out in the audience and they're like, we played a soundbite in that story that when you mess with vulnerable people, disabled people, it really takes a toll on the broader community. what ended up happening is that lawmakers said this is just the beginning of our conversation. Again, this is a committee health meeting, so legislation is not passed in these meetings. But I can speak broadly. What happens in the committee meetings is that in the off season, so like the spring and the summer, these lawmakers get together, they have meetings and hearings, they hear testimony, and essentially what's supposed to follow is that those meetings result in plans and recommendations to inform the legislative session that comes up in the beginning of the year, so that maybe it could possibly affect a law. But in short, we don't really know what's going to happen. It was just a conversation so these clinics and these families can make their voices heard. The difficult thing here was that CareSource was present at the top of that meeting, but the designated leader had to leave for another situation. We don't know all the ins and outs, but when a lawmaker asked, is a CareSource representative, the leader for Georgia, are they available? Someone else came on the podium and said, I work for CareSource, but that person had to leave. And so that was a little bit of a gap in the conversation. Lawmakers wanted to be able to ask, hey, what are you guys going to do now that you hear this outcry? We reached out to CareSource, and it seems like they're working. They're working on something. We don't know what could come of this. But if you ask some of the clinics and these lawmakers, it doesn't seem like they're working fast enough.
And so you mentioned she's got August as a deadline here to lose this care, and CareSource would be the only one that would be able to step in prior to legislative session in 2027.
So there are 3 Medicaid insurers in Georgia. So CareSource is just one of 3. So, but they're the largest in Georgia. And so since this family is already on CareSource, it's not like they can hop over to another insurance company, but they could pay out of pocket. We know how that goes. If you're already worried about making ends meet and you have a child who is struggling with disabilities, it's pretty difficult to just have a fund out of nowhere to be able to pay for insurance out of pocket. I mean, I don't think it's controversial to say it's not really doable, that you don't have the funding for it. CareSource, though, again, they're the leader in all of this. They are one of the biggest insurers in Georgia. And so it's a really big deal that they are changing because it's not like these families have dozens of other options to choose from. If you're on CareSource, you're on CareSource. If you were on another Medicaid provider, that's the provider you're on. But these are just for people who have the CareSource insurance. But it's like hundreds of thousands of people in Georgia that rely on this. CareSource did give us a statement. So they said in part,
CareSource's priority is making sure our members have access to the care they need while supporting the long-term sustainability of Georgia's Medicaid program. We're committed to being fully compliant with state and federal requirements and to maintaining a provider network that continues to meet the needs of the members we serve. Additionally, our teams are working closely with affected members to preserve continuity of care throughout the transition. As healthcare costs continue to intensify, keeping Georgia's Medicaid program strong is a shared responsibility. CareSource remains committed to working with providers and healthcare leaders to protect access to high-quality care for the families who need it.
Okay, and at the top of this Medicaid issue is the Department of Community Health here in Georgia. What did they say?
Georgia Department of Community Health is the state oversight agency, but in some ways their hands are tied because Medicaid is a federal issue, and these are just companies that are issuing payments, taxpayer dollars. So DCH is saying, hey, CareSource has the authority to do this, and we can't do anything more. They are well within their rights. However, DCH is saying they're working with CareSource to make sure that they still have an adequate amount of providers in the state of Georgia. So there seems to be some conversations going on behind the scenes, and we'll just be watching this over the coming weeks.
You definitely will, in months, even with any legislation. Amazing first stories to just get the word out there, get these voices heard. And the other thing is that we do have, our tip line, but we also have your email. You just go to our website, atlantanewsfirst.com, look up Sierra Cummings. Your contact information is on there because there are so many families that are affected by this, and we want to hear from them.
It's so true. Since our stories aired, we've heard from a lot more families and clinics that are like, please stay on top of this. So we certainly will.
All right. Great reporting. Thanks for tuning in to Behind the Investigation with Atlanta News First Investigates. For more on this story, go to atlantanewsfirst.com and click on the ANF Investigates tab. You can listen to more award-winning investigations wherever you get your podcasts by searching Behind the Investigation with Atlanta News First. And tune in Sundays for an hour-long episode of Uncovered, where we highlight some of our biggest investigations that impact our communities.